Alright guys, before we get into the podcast, let's get through the rigmarole first. Remember guys, this podcast posts each and every single Wednesday. The first segment of the show, we go through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. The second segment of the show, we go through all the AFC East news you need to know about. The third segment of the show, we preview game day. And the fourth and final segment of the show, we go through the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A. So this first news story, Dolphins unlikely to express interest and quarterback Eli Manning. Now, I know a lot of Dolphins fans are excited because free agency for the quarterback position is pretty ridiculous when you think about how many franchise quarterbacks are going to be able to pick any team they really want to, and one of them is going to get away from their original team. So this is one of them. Obviously, Eli Manning had a disappointing season, and so did New York. So let's get into this story right here. Although the Dolphins have already been linked to a possible off-season acquisition of Giants quarterback Eli Manning, Miami is, quote, highly unlikely to pursue Manning, giving the club's investment in fellow single caller Ryan Tannehill. Team sources tell Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald there's a lot to unpack here. But first is the subject of whether Manning will even be available during the offseason. The Giants fired both general manager Jerry Reese and head coach Ben McAdoo on Monday, meaning another group of decision makers will be leading the club next year. Manning is under contract through 2019 with cap changes north of $22 million in each of the next two campaigns. And his deal also contains a full no-trade clause. If Manning does hit the free agent or trade market, the Dolphins would on the surface, make sense as a potential destination, especially given the presence of head coach Adam Gase. Gase worked with Eli's brother Peyton Manning for 3 seasons in Denver, meaning he should have a familiarity with the Manning clan. While there's almost no chance Jay Cutler returns to South Beach in 2018, given that he ranks in the bottom five categories of nearly every quarterback metric. Every report has indicated Tannehill will be back next season. In October, Ian Rappaport of NFL.com reported Miami still thinks, quote, extremely highly of Ryan Tannehill and plans to utilize him as its starting quarterback next year. While there haven't been any recent health updates on Tannehill, who tore his ACL in August, his injury timeline should allow him to recover and start for the 2018 campaign. Tannehill, 29, is under contract through 2020. Although he's essentially working on a pass-as-you-go deal, the Dolphins could cut ties with him at any point over the next 3 years without incurring greater than $5 million in dead money. So further detailing this whole situation with the quarterbacks and all the free agent quarterbacks and all of the moving pieces, there's a lot of unknowns going into this offseason. There's a lot of high-value, high-profile quarterbacks that are going to be either dealt or going to be free agents. Like Andrew Luck is heavily rumored not to be a Colt after this season, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. Now, God knows it's going to take 3 or 4 first-round picks to even get that man. But I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Andrew Luck was gone. So again, there's a lot of moving parts in the quarterback free agency market, but people have to understand where Tannehill was in 2016. It's almost 2 years ago where he had that breakout second half of the season and really break out the entire season. I always thought he was playing well. It was more of the pieces around him that particular season. He got off, the entire team really got off to a really slow start that season. But man, did he finish strong. 5 fourth quarter comebacks. It was either 5 or 4, I can't remember. But obviously, that game he had against the number 2 ranked defense in the NFL against the Cardinals, throwing for 3 touchdown passes before he tore his ACL. Tannehill was on the right track. So I don't think the Dolphins need to do anything at the quarterback position this next offseason except draft a backup quarterback. I think we definitely need an insurance policy there. But Tannehill is our guy for the foreseeable future. We need to continue to build this team around him for future success. Now, when you're comparing Tannehill to Eli Manning, I don't even think it's a close contest at this point. I think Tannehill is he's just a better quarterback at this point in his career. He's in his prime. He understands the game better than he ever has. So he's really married his physical skills with the mental side of football. And Tannehill's always been a smart guy, but I think this is really where we're going to get the best we've ever seen of him for the next, for the foreseeable future. and that makes me excited. I think this team is really good. We've overlooked a lot of key injuries this season, but with a chance to improve this offensive line that has one young player that we didn't really foresee being as good as he has been, which is Jesse Davis. I mean, he's been a godsend. This team has a very bright future, and I think Tannehill is he's a big key to that future. And Adam Gase had really, really high hopes for him. Obviously, he told Jeff Darlington, the beat writer for, I think, ESPN now, he told him that, he expects great things, and he said Tannehill was going to be a beast. He's going to be a beast this season. So I have high expectations for the man going forward, and I think nothing but good things to come from Tannehill for the foreseeable future. But it is very interesting, because if the Dolphins did decide to move on, there's a lot to be desired there in the free agency market. So it's interesting. It's interesting stuff, to say the least. This is less of a news story than more of an article, but it's still interesting nonetheless. It's who is the one player the Dolphins cannot afford to lose, and it's Ndamukong Suh. Let's see. The Dolphins have suffered plenty of injuries this season, starting with Ryan Tannehill's knee and working through what feels like most of the roster. It is hard at this point to come up with the player that the team can at least afford to lose, simply because they've already lost so many players. The injured reserve list currently includes Tannehill, Nate Allen, Isaiah Ford, William Hayes, Juwan James, Tony Lippett, Raekwon McMillan, Koa Misi, and Anthony Steen. Who would break the Dolphins at this point? There are a few candidates. Kenyon Drake would be a hard loss to absorb, especially with fellow running back Damian Williams banged up. Losing quarterback Jay Cutler now would be harsh, but the Dolphins have seen that happen twice already this year. So maybe they would be able to overcome it. So much of the offense goes through wide receiver Jarvis Landry that he might be the right answer for this week's question. I think, however, though, the answer I will give is on the defensive side of the football. I'll select defensive tackle Ndamukong Suh. The 5-time Pro Bowler dominates the middle of the line of scrimmage, allowing Jordan Phillips as the other defensive tackle, along with defensive ends Cameron Wake, Andre Branch, and Charles Harris, to create pressure from the sides. Suh continues to show why he's among the best interior defensive linemen in the league, and he really sets the tone for the defense. So it begs the question, and the reason I bring this up is because Suh's future with this team is kind of murky. I'm not going to, a lot of people want to say that, the Dolphins are going to ask him for a pay cut, all that other stuff. Interviews that Suh has done over the past weeks, it really seems that he thinks he's going to be here for a long period of time. And he said before that this is the last stop of his career and he wants to finish a Miami Dolphin. Not saying that means that he will, but I think Suh is a big part of this defense. And it's a dang shame that we weren't, we had all those injuries, and a lot of our key players from the 2016 season really couldn't build off of that 2016 season where they exploded with their talent. Players like Tony Lippett, Ryan Tannehill, who had their best seasons. So it's unfortunate. I think Suh is still a big part of this team moving forward. I think he's still a big part of the franchise. And I think we need to retain him at all costs, and that's hard to say because we got a lot of key free agents this upcoming season. We talk about Juwan James and Jarvis Landry. There's a lot of really big decisions to be made this offseason, and hopefully the Dolphins make the right ones and can compensate where there needs to be where there's areas that you can. But I think Suh is such a tough loss to lose. But we'll see how his situation's handled. Obviously, his contract is a big one, and it calls for a lot of cheddar. But hopefully, we can find some way around it. But I do think Suh is a big part of this defense, and will be for years to come. Hopefully, he's only the age of 30. This is it's hard to believe this is only his 8th season in the league, so he's still a relatively young player, and he's still in his prime. So hopefully next season we can utilize his prime to win more football games. So this next, it's more of an article than it is a news report, but it's very interesting. How do the Dolphins make the playoffs? Win out and get a little help. So this is going down everything that we need to happen to make it. Okay, so Number one, win out, plain and simple. The odds of an 8-8 team making the playoffs aren't very good. Miami will need to sweep the Bills and beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead, which isn't an easy task. The stadium is loud and Buffalo is really, really cold. Step two, if the Ravens or Oakland, but much less likely, get to 9-7 along with the Dolphins, start hoping for a multi-team tie. Miami would need one other team to get into the bracket in order to have a chance. Miami currently has the head-to-head over the Titans and Chargers, and if they win out, Kansas City as well. Not to mention pushing Buffalo to max 8-8, likely 7-9 in that scenario. The Chiefs' only path is to 9-7. That scenario gets them the AFC West. So that's very interesting because they have a big game against the Chargers this upcoming week, and that basically decides the division. But who do the Dolphins want to win in that scenario? Because if the Chiefs win, then I think they only have 6 losses, so I can't remember their exact record right now, but that obviously keeps them from 7 losses. And if they beat the Chargers, that drops them to 7 losses. Then we get the tiebreaker with the Chargers. And then we play the Chiefs later in the season, and if we beat them, then we would get the tiebreaker with them. That would knock them both to 7 losses, and we would have the tiebreaker with both football teams. So that's an interesting scenario. It's a very weird thing. Let's move on to another likely scenario to get the Dolphins in the playoffs. If the Miami Dolphins win out, then the Buffalo Bills are eliminated by default and will likely lose out, including a loss to New England, making for a 7-9 season for the Bills. That also means the Chiefs would have to beat both the Chargers and Broncos to get to 9-7. The Chargers are red hot right now, and the Chiefs have been inconsistent to say the least. If the Chargers win next week, could the Chiefs be on their way to an 8-8 season and missing out on the playoffs? If the Chiefs beat the Chargers but lose to Miami, they could get to 9-7 and win the division. Even if the Chargers are also 9-7, that means the Chargers would be in the wild card hunt. The Cowboys are somehow still alive in the insane NFC race, thanks to Morrison Smith. The Eagles are going to be playing run-first football with Wentz, lost for the season, and the Chargers have Melvin Gordon. It's a bad time. It's a bad time of the year to be an Oakland team that can't seem to stop anyone on the ground. Riding that sinking wave is the Titans, who have been lackluster at times. Mariota is not playing well. The defense is in the middle of the pack. They have eked out some close wins. They get the quote new look Niners, who could come with some surprises as the team seems to rally behind its new quarterback. They also get the Rams and Jags, two of the hottest teams in football going into December play. 1 or 2 or 3 is possibility here. So he's saying that the Titans could, obviously not beat the 49ers, not beat the Jaguars, and not beat the Rams, which is highly likely. And then obviously we hold the head-to-head tiebreaker. If they go 0-3 in those games, we don't even need it. On the other hand, the Ravens seems to have the easiest path to the playoffs. This is where it basically sucks. The Browns are bad, very bad. Josh Gordon helps, but probably not enough. The Colts are bad. Andrew Luck makes that team tick. Without them, they are lost. Then there are the Bengals. That is going to be another chippy game, especially since the Bengals will be eliminated from the playoff contention and looking to play spoiler. 3-0 or 2-1 is a distinct possibility from the Ravens. So if the Ravens win out, it's all hope is lost. So that sucks, but see, that's not necessarily true. If the Ravens went out, and then if the Bills, so this is a whole situation. So if the Ravens went out, there's still a chance because another team could fall off somewhere in that wild card spot, like the Titans. So there might not be 2 AFC South teams that make it. So that's a possibility as well. So this whole situation is it's a puzzle at this point. But if you're a Dolphins fan, you just need to be checking the scores of basically every hopeful wildcard team at this point. All right, this next news story, again, it's more of an article. Miami Dolphins must find a way to re-sign Jarvis Landry. All right, Jarvis Landry has been one of the faces of the Miami Dolphins franchise since being drafted with the 63rd overall pick in the 2014 NFL Draft. He has become one of the most dangerous wide receivers in the NFL and has had a good season for the Dolphins this year, despite the quarterback struggles that they have had. Unfortunately for the Dolphins, Landry is scheduled to hit the open free agency market this offseason. They could use the franchise tag to keep him in town, but it has been reported that Landry is not happy with the Dolphins right now. No one can blame him, as Landry has been forced to play with average quarterbacks at best. Now, I don't know where he got that report. While the Dolphins could use the franchise tag on Landry this offseason, that will not fix the long-term possibility of losing him. In fact, tagging him and not coming to terms on a long-term deal would all but guarantee that he would leave next offseason. Miami must find a way to re-sign Landry to a long-term contract this offseason and keep him in town as their number one wide receiver. Throughout the course of the 2017 season, Landry has put together very solid numbers. He has caught 88 passes for 745 yards and 8 touchdowns. According to ESPN statistics, his 8 touchdown receptions is actually a career best, with his previous high being just 5 touchdowns as a rookie in 2014, which is true. At just 25 years of age, Landry is heading into the prime of his career. He has made the best of the quarterback situation in Miami, with Jay Cutler simply not panning out for the Dolphins. Surprisingly, even with Cutler's struggles, the Dolphins' passing offense has been relatively solid. That has happened despite Cutler's 11 interceptions and injuries that have forced Matt Moore into the starting lineup at times. Adam Gase certainly has not seen his job in Miami go the way that he had planned. He was expected to bring a dynamic offense to the Dolphins and get them back into serious contention in the AFC. Miami was a playoff team last season, making it to the wildcard round before being knocked out by the Pittsburgh Steelers. That being said, losing Landry would be a huge step in the wrong direction for the Dolphins. There are very few wide receivers with that skill set that Landry brings to the table. Seeing him walk would certainly hurt the Dolphins' long-term plans. Needless to say, Miami will face quite a bit of competition for Landry's services. There will be countless teams lining up with interest in signing that star receiver. Finding a way to convince him that Miami can offer him a chance to compete for a championship won't be easy, but they must find a way to do so. Expect to see the Dolphins make re-signing Landry an instant priority this offseason. They cannot afford to play games with him and hope to keep him around. Rumors will fly about Landry as the offseason continues to draw closer. It's a scary situation, if I'm being honest with you, because this is seriously similar. It's such a tough place to be in at this point in time. But the things that he said about Landry not being happy and all this other stuff. Jarvis loves Miami. I don't know where he got that report, but you can see in interviews the way he plays on the field. Miami means a lot to him. He loves Adam Gase to death. In interviews that we've seen with him in the past, they have a great relationship. Adam has said multiple times in press conferences that he wants Jarvis to be a part of the team's future. He expects him to be a part of the team's future, and he absolutely loves him because of the consistency that he has and just the utter passion that he plays with week in and week out. So I don't know where he's getting Landry being upset. I think he's just assuming that because of the season that we've had and how disappointing it has been. So I don't know how credible that is. I think Jarvis is happy where he is. And I think he understands where we're going and what happened and what went wrong this season. And he understands that those problems that plagued us this season aren't long-term issues. Like some of the players that have not performed well this season aren't long-term players on this team. So, some of them won't be here next offseason because they were basically Band-Aids, and, obviously those Band-Aids did not work out. Because this team was better. I thought we were going to win 10-plus games this season. And it's unfortunate. It's very disappointing season, but we're still a chance we could actually make the playoffs, which would be amazing. This last news story: Miami Dolphins young nucleus starting to grow up. Like any parent raising an impressionable young person trying to find his or her way in this world, the best formula is to keep reinforcing your core values. Install a work ethic, provide discipline, inject your belief system, reinforce their confidence, and then hope that one day all that clicks and everything you've planned bears fruit. The playoffs might not happen immediately, but with a little diligence and patience, everything you've invested in will likely produce a harvest. Coach Adam Gase's harvest is starting to arrive, courtesy of a few second and third year Miami Dolphins who are putting together some breakout performances in December. This season was supposed to be about growth, development, and discovery. Even though the outcome hasn't always been kind to Gase's team. The performances we've seen from players like Kenyon Drake, Xavier Howard, Jordan Phillips, Bobby McCain, Jesse Davis, and Laramie Tunsil serve to show that the mission is on the verge of being accomplished. We've been wowed by the potential of Drake, who began the season as Miami's number 3 tailback and is blossoming into a dangerous NFL weapon. And as the last man standing, the Dolphins' injury-depleted backfield, Drake has carried Miami's rushing attack with 2 consecutive 100-yard rushing performances, balancing out what has once been an anemic offense. I think this is a quote from Kenyon Drake. Quote, I feel like I feel like I try to go out there with a level of arrogance that I feel like I can go out there and help this team win in any way possible. Drake said, the Dolphins' 2016 third-round pick. My confidence has stayed pretty stagnant because regardless if I fumble or whatever the case may be, I'm going to go out there and prove that I can be a top-notch player. And he has been. He's been a versatile player for us, and it's been amazing to watch. We've witnessed Howard, the Dolphins' 2016 second-round pick, struggle for much of his season, overcoming injuries and then adversity. But the former Baylor standout never hung his head before rebounding with 2 games in a row that featured a pair of interceptions, one of which was a pick six. Howard intercepted New England quarterback Tom Brady twice in the Dolphins' 27-20 upset victory over the Patriots on Monday night, and locked down New England's top receiver Brandon Cooks all game, allowing 1 catch for 38 yards on the Patriots' final possession. That was not his fault. That was a busted coverage in zone, it's so, I understood what Matt Burke was trying to do there, but I wish we kept just playing man-to-man and being aggressive. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't convert a third down when we played man coverage all game, so I don't know why we stopped, but again, that wasn't his fault. This is I think a quote from Cameron Wake. He says, to be very honest and frank, it's not surprising Dolphins pass rusher Cameron Wake of the young cornerback who dominated practice all off-season, which is true. From the moment he arrived on campus last year, I knew the ability he had, the type of mentality and what he can bring to the table. You can tell him I said it's about time. The same could be said for Tunsil, the Dolphins' 2016 first-round pick, who has been a hot and cold all season. It's his first year as Miami's left tackle, so growing pains were to be expected, and they certainly came, especially early. But it appears Tunsil is settling in with a veteran like Ted Larson playing next to him at left guard, and it's providing more consistent play. And the Dolphins' entire offensive line has begun to settle in, opening up lanes and producing an adequate pocket for their quarterback. Jesse Davis, who we've seen transform from a former practice squad member in 2016 into an NFL starter in the span of 7 games, deserves some credit here too because he's used this extended tryout to impress Miami's coaches. Davis is yet another example of what happens when young players seize their opportunities and provide the type of performances that help the team win games. All it requires sometimes is patience and a continued investment, even during the rough times, which will come in professional sports. I gave him a really hard time. Gay said when asked about Drake, just to see his engagement in meetings and practice, and how much you can see the effort he's putting forth to try to make sure he does everything right. He wants to be a reliable guy. Just seeing that growth really fast, it's been a fun experience, said Coach Gase. So again, it's just an amazing time, these last few weeks, because the most important thing we can take out of this season, among other things, is this team has a very bright future, and especially on the defensive side of the football. People that weren't mentioned in that article, because it's hard to mention them all. Cordrea Tankersley, who's been a big part of this team this season. Bobby McCain, who's having by far his best season and has been just an utter lockdown corner. You didn't hear Bobby McCain's name called once in Monday night's game. Same thing could be said for the Bronco game. Same thing could be said for probably every single game this season, other than like a few times. So Bobby McCain has looked like a shutdown slot corner. He's been a great tackler when he's had to, but almost every other time he hasn't had to tackle anybody because nobody even tries to throw his way. So he's been very impressive. Like I said, Cordrea Tankersley, the two safeties that have a super bright future here in Miami, TJ and Rashad, who look amazing together. This team has a lot of things that they can be proud of and happy with moving forward because of the performances of these young players. And again, Jakeem Grant, who had hopefully a breakout performance on Monday night, by far his best performance as a wide receiver. Hopefully he continues to grow as a young stud in this league. So it's a very exciting time for a lot of young players on this football team. And I'm happy to see Jesse Davis play the way he has played because, man, he is, again, it's a blessing that we have somebody like him at his position who is as versatile as he can be when he can play tackle at a high level. He's played guard at a high level these past 2 weeks, even though he struggled at times at the guard position. But he's definitely settling in at that position, and he's looking pretty dang good. So just a lot to like on this young Dolphins roster. All right, so we're just going to jump into previewing the Buffalo Bills game. We're gonna skip. I don't have a mock draft this week, and I don't have really. There's not a lot to talk about within the AFC East other than the Buffalo Bills, which we're gonna talk a lot about anyway because we play them this week. So let's talk about the Bills. The thing that when you look at this matchup, and the things that we've obviously, even before Adam Gase got here, because we swept the Bills last year. We really struggled in Buffalo, like really bad, like for years, really. Tannehill never won up in Buffalo, has still yet to win a start up in Buffalo. It was a struggle for a long time. We struggled against the Bills just in general, and I think that had a lot to do with our inability to stop a mobile quarterback. When you look at their quarterbacks over the last few years that they've had, starting against us, when you talk about EJ Manuel, Thad Lewis, Tyrod Taylor, the one thing all those guys had in common was just the ability to move within the pocket, and the ability to create plays with their legs. So this is a huge game, obviously for multiple different reasons. This is a playoff game, and it's going to be snowy, it's going to be cold. But the thing that we have to do in this game is stop the run. We have to stuff the run because if we make this team one-dimensional, they don't have a lot of playmakers on the outside that can take over a game. They have a lot of complementary players to the running game, like a Kelvin Benjamin, like a Zay Jones, like a Jordan Matthews, like Zay and not Zay Jones, but Jordan Matthews is a possession guy, and Kelvin, I've watched him for years in Carolina. My brother's a huge Panthers fan. Probably have seen every game he started as a Panther. So Kelvin had his best games when the running game was working. He's also, there's been a couple exceptions here or there if he's had a good matchup on a corner that's way smaller. But he's going up against a corner in Xavier Howard that's a physical, big corner and is very, very fast. And Kelvin is not a fast receiver by any means. So the thing that the Buffalo Bills have done very well all season long is run the football and control the clock. And their defense is a bend but don't break defense. So we'll give up field goals, but we're not giving up touchdowns. And that's what they've been really, really good at this entire season. They've fallen off a lot these past weeks. They really can't stop the run, but we'll get into the defense here in a second. But the offense, the one crucial thing that the Dolphins have to do more than anything is stop the running game. Stop the read option, which we have struggled with. Sean McDermott is he's running the same offense that they ran in Buffalo. They have the same values, the same mentality, and they involve Tyrod Taylor in that running game a little less than they did with when Rex Ryan was the head coach. They're not as creative as that. They really, Sean has really, obviously, he's wanted to pass more within the pocket. That's the kind of quarterback that he likes. That has, obviously, he tried to go down that road with Nathan Peterman. That really didn't work out so well. So, again, if we make this team one-dimensional, then it's going to be very tough for the Bills to score touchdowns on a consistent basis. So if we could stop the run with LaShawn McCoy, who they have leaned on heavily, especially these last few weeks. I mean, the man, I think, touched the ball 25 times last week for 152 yards, and obviously the game-winning touchdown in overtime. And every win that they've had this year, Shady has had a big game. And every single one of them, he's had a big game running the football. So again, LaShawn McCoy is a huge part of that offense. And if you can somehow stop him, then you should have a good day against the Buffalo Bills, excuse me. But it's very hard to do that. LeSean McCoy is a Hall of Famer, in my opinion. The man's been doing it for his entire career. He's been consistent. He's one of the toughest players to stop in open space in NFL history. So we have to do everything that we can to neutralize him. And in terms of things that the Dolphins defense needs to focus on is third down. Third down is going to be very crucial in this game. There's going to be a lot of third downs in this game, early and often. The thing that we have to do is be disciplined as we possibly can, because Tyrod Taylor obviously makes plays with his feet. He's a playmaker. He's really, really good at it. He's a great open field runner. I mean, he has the ability to see the field just like a running back does, and the ability to make people miss in the backfield and make people miss on the edge. He has that special thing that like Michael Vick had. He has that, or Russell Wilson has, that just ability to make people miss and buy time for his receivers to make plays. So we have to be really disciplined, and all of those players, when you talk about Michael Vick, Russell Wilson, obviously Tyrod right now, all of those players, what they had in common is they make plays on third down. They make plays on the money down with their legs, like I was just talking about. So if you can somehow be a disciplined defense, know your gaps, know where your defense is supposed to be on every single down, be disciplined, and not let him beat you with his legs, and be very, very good on third down, then you're going to have success against this offense. But that's harder than it sounds, because Tyrod can wreck your game. He can wreck a game plan. And like I said, we just have to be really, really good on third down. The two priorities is stopping the run and being very good on third down. If we have to get this offense off the field as many times as possible, because once they get in the red zone, we know this defense has been very, 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 very not so good against the running attack in goal line scenarios. We're dead last in the NFL in red zone defense. So that's a tough position, and it's a tough position anytime you go against an offense that has a mobile quarterback that, obviously they utilize him pretty well as a mobile quarterback, and that also has a Pro Bowl running back like LeSean McCoy. It's very difficult to defend that in close spaces, because there's RPOs, obviously run pass options. There's a lot of things that they can do with him and get really creative with him on the goal line. So it's going to be tough, but it's going to be very tough to contain Tyrod because of his playmaking ability. But those are the two, those are the two things that we need to lock down on. It's just third down defense, getting them off the field as much as possible. As many opportunities as we get, we need to get them off the field. And then obviously neutralizing LeSean McCoy at all costs. Those are the two biggest things. It's going to be very hard to do. Buffalo, obviously, we know as Dolphins fans, is a very tough place to play. Their crowd is very loud. Even when their team's bad, winning, losing, indifferent, it doesn't matter. That crowd has always been a big factor for them. And that's one of the bigger reasons we've struggled when we go up there. But if we could stop the running game, which is going to be hard to do in the snow and the cold, and be a really good third down defense, because their passing game is not very good. If we can do that, then make them one-dimensional, then our defense is going to have a really, really good day. All right, I'm running out of breath here. Let's move on to the offensive side of the football. And when you look at this offense and how much better it has been at home as opposed to the road, it's almost ridiculous when you think about it. All of the shutouts that we've had have been on the road. You think about the Ravens, that was a shutout on the road. The Saints technically was a home game, not really. That was in London, shutout on the road. Then you look at the what was the other game that we got shut out? It was Ravens, Saints. I'm drawing a blank here. I think we've been shut out 3 times, but I know the other game was on the road. So, a lot of that has to do with miscommunication issues, not being able to hear. But I think the offense has finally settled down and understands what they do well. And I think Jay Cutler is playing at a very high level right now. The last 2 weeks, really. I mean, he's the one thing that I've said about the man hasn't been consistent, but the last 2 weeks he's put together pretty dang good performances. When you think about what he did against the Broncos, making plays with his legs, finding receivers down the field. Same thing against the Patriots, making plays with his legs, finding people downfield. Being accurate on the deep ball, which has been a big emphasis for me with him. And just being efficient and not turning the football over. Those are all things that he's done the last 2, other than the Broncos game, which he got a little gunslingery a lot that game. But he's played very well the last 2 weeks. So that's obviously a big part of this game. But, like I said, it's been a totally different offense on the road than at home. And we really haven't had a great offensive game on the road. I think probably our best one was against the Falcons, and I think we scored 24 points in that game, something like that, or 20 points in that game. So the biggest emphasis, I think, is communication, understanding what we're trying to do. And I think a lot of that has to come with identity. I think we finally figured out what we like to do. And Kenyon Drake has really added a stability to this offense, and knowing that we have a reliable playmaker in the running game. And the offensive line has really panned out. And one thing that the Bills really have struggled with, they don't have a lot of big dudes up front, especially in the middle of that defense. When you think about what we had to go against with the Patriots have two very big defensive linemen in the middle of their defense. They have Malcolm Brown, and Alan Branch, who are two very big defensive linemen, and who can control the middle of that defense, and it's very hard to run on them. But when you talk about the Bills, they got rid of Marcel Darius, who's really left a hole in that defense. And on the ends, they don't have a lot of really dominant edge run defenders. They have Shaq Lawson, who's more of a pass rusher. Lorenzo Alexander, who they've converted to a linebacker. He's not there anymore to defend the edge. So their run defense isn't very good. Kyle Williams is the only real threat in that department. I mean, he's going to make his plays, every now and then, but if we can stay consistent and true to the running game and get off to a fast start and somehow make the Bills one-dimensional, and if we force them to pass the football a lot, we saw what the Jets were able to do when they forced them to pass the football. The Jets are a very good run defense, and the Bills cannot run the ball on them. So if we can shut the running game down and get off to an early lead on offense, that's the formula for winning for this football team, because then our defense does what it's built to do, which is rush the passer and get after the quarterback and force turnovers, and then the offense can run the football, control the clock, which then in turn, obviously neutralizes their running game, and then we can really get off, some of those play action passes, maybe force them to put an extra man in the box, take some shots downfield, which isn't something that they haven't done. They've been very reluctant to do, but they've played a lot of just really bend but don't break kind of a defense. So obviously we're going to have to convert our chances when we get into the red zone, which is going to be crucial. But again, those are the key factors to this game. Really just stuff the running game for the Bills, be a very good defense on third down, neutralize the playmaking ability of Tyrod Taylor, which is what I mean by be very good on third down. And for the offense, just get off to an early and fast start. Don't go out there, go three and out 3 times in a row, like we've seen sometimes in a hostile environment with this Dolphins offense. Go out there, start strong, get a field goal, similar to what we did in the Chargers game. Start strong. They don't really have much of a home crowd, but you know what I'm saying. Start strong. That's what we were able to do last time we played them, is really start strong. We put up 14 points, I think, very early on in that game. So if we can do that, some of those similar things in this game, then we'll have a very, very high chance of doing it. So my keys to this game: start strong on offense, stop the running game of the Bills, and try to neutralize the playmaking ability of Tyrod Taylor with his legs on third down, especially. That's really, when previewing this game, really all we really have to look out for, because that's what the Bills do very, very well. All right, so let's get into the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A. This first question comes from Thomas the Kid TV. He says, if it's not too late, can you go through scenarios of who needs to win/lose for us to get in the playoffs? Or next week if you don't have time. Well, just for a quick, because we went through it earlier in the podcast, but just a quick rundown. I think, our best chance to get in, I think we have a good chance to get in if we win out. But I think the team that's going to fall off the map is the Titans. They've been playing pretty bad football. Their remaining schedule is pretty tough. They have the Rams, the 49ers, who are playing very well right now because Jimmy Garoppolo is not turning the ball over, which allows their defense to win them games. And I think Garoppolo can score over 21 points, even with that roster on offense. So that's a tough game. Obviously, they have the Rams and then the Jaguars, who the Jaguars are on just killing people right now. So the Titans could fall off the face of the planet Earth, and we could sneak in as well. So I don't think 2 AFC South teams are making it. So I think that would be probably our best shot there. Ronald says, where was the creative play calling? Where was this creative play calling all year? I don't think it was much so. I mean, it was the same offense we've been running. I mean, there was no formation. I think there was 2 new formations according to I can't remember who. I think it was. I can't remember who went through the entire thing, but it's an interesting article. But I think there was only 2 new formations that were installed for this week's particular game. So it was most of the same things that we've been running. We just executed it better. And I think the creativeness came with understanding what the Patriots have been struggling with and attacking their weaknesses of their defense. And I think we did that to a T. And that's something Adam Gase is very good at. It's just the players and sometimes have failed to execute that this week, or excuse me, not this week, this year at times, but I don't think it has anything to do with the play calling. I think it was just better execution, and I think this lineup with this personnel just fits Adam Gase's offense better than any other lineup the entire time he's been here. Ronald says, can we use Jakeem the Dream now that he scored his first touchdown? I hope so, Ronald, because Jakeem is a very talented man, and I hope he splits reps on the outside with Devontae Parker. And again, very similar to what the Falcons do with Julio Jones. If we can somehow get Jakeem out there, get him more playing time, getting him more snaps, calling his number more, I think it would benefit us greatly. Because we saw he did a lot of damage to that New England Patriots offense, and when he gets the ball in his hands, he's a threat to take it all the way to the end zone at any given time. So he needs to get more snaps because, again, like I said, he's just such a big playmaker for our offense. He just brings that big playability to the offense, and he allows us to put more points on the board. So hopefully he can get onto the field more. Axel Rivera, and I hope again, I think it has more to do with him getting playing time than it does him being consistent. Axel Rivera says, Scax1383, how do you think the Miami Dolphins will manage the weather at Buffalo? Well, if you bring a running game up to Buffalo, that's always a good thing. So if we can bring a run game, a consistent running attack on the road at Buffalo, then I think we'll have a very good chance of winning. You guys got to remember, we rushed for over, 200 yards with Jay Ajayi last time we beat them up in Buffalo. And that game went into overtime, and we still barely won it. So you have to bring a running game up to Buffalo, and especially in bad weather conditions, because it's easier to run the football than it is to pass it in those kind of conditions. So if Kenyon brings his A game in this game, then I think we'll be very, very we have a really good chance to win. But we have to bring a running game. If you look at the teams that have been able, team that has been able to beat the Buffalo Bills in their home stadium, brought the running game. When you think about what the Saints did, Melvin Ingram and Alvin Kamara, they won that game for them. So we have to, if we can't run the ball, it's going to be very hard to beat them up in Buffalo. Same thing with the Patriots. Other than Gronk having a really good game because of matchup issues, they couldn't pass the football. It was mainly Rex Burkhead and Deion Lewis that had, really moved that offense on a consistent basis. So we have to bring a running game up there to Buffalo. That's how we'll manage the weather. Gamerific says, what happened to Cordrea Tankersley? I didn't find out. He's banged up right now. I think he's got a bum ankle right now. He hurt his ankle a few weeks back. I know that's something that's bothering him. Hopefully we get him back this week. And if we don't, I like how Alteron Werner played on Monday Night Football. He's a veteran guy, has a lot of experience. He's had a lot of success in the past. He was a Pro Bowler once upon a time with Tennessee, so it's not that big of a deal. Cordrea is a great corner, and what I mean by great, he's not like Darrell or Revis or anything, but for a rookie corner to perform at his level, he's been playing above what I expected from him. Brandon says, realistically speaking, can we make the playoff? Can we make the playoff push? The toughest game we're gonna have is this game. Other than the Patriots game, this is the toughest game. Is going up to Buffalo and winning it because it's such a tough environment to win in. They've got a great, like I said, their home field advantage is ridiculous. They have well above a 500 record at home this year. And Sean McDermott has done a very good job of using that home field advantage to his advantage because he's putting emphasis on the running game, take some pressure out Tyrod Taylor, and that obviously has helped their defense and all that kind of stuff. So we have to win that game. Obviously we have to win all 3 games, but this is the biggest one. This is gonna be the toughest test in my opinion. Brandon says, Jay Cutler finally went a game without throwing an interception. Do you think he can do it again? Yeah. The secondary, Micah Hyde, he's been great all year. He's a Pro Bowler. But other than that, Ladarius White, he's been very good. their secondary, they're opportunistic, but they don't have a lot of play. They play a lot of zone. It's going to be interesting. I think Jay Cutler, I think he'll do a really good job because the defense that he plays Buffalo twice and then obviously the Chiefs. Both of those teams, they don't have ridiculously good secondaries. Buffalo doesn't have a ridiculously good front seven right now, especially in the middle of their football or their defensive line. So he's not going against world beaters at the defensive position, and he's going against a defense this week against the Bills that allows a lot of rushing yards a game, so that can take a lot of pressure off of him as well. So he shouldn't turn the ball over unless he makes bonehead mistakes. This question comes from Brandon again. He says, He says, let's see here. I lost it. He says, do you think we draft a running back in the draft this year? Yeah, I do. I think Adam loves Damian a lot, and he loves Kenyon to death. So, it's a tough one. I wouldn't be surprised if we did in the later rounds. So, I would be surprised. Let's see here. Brandon says our last few drafts has been very successful. We used mostly everybody we've drafted since the 2014 draft. Is that due to the front office change or maybe Adam Gase's coaching style? The last two drafts has been very productive for us. And you're right, since 2014, we've a lot of key players from that draft as well when you talk about some of the players we got out of that draft. But the last few drafts have been pretty dang good for us. When you talk about Jordan Phillips, Juwan James, Jarvis Landry, Cordrea, Laramie, all of those guys have been big. Charles Harris, who's been pretty good for us, and Raekwon, who's going to return, and Jakeem Grant, Kenyon Drake, they've been pretty dang good. Chris Greer and Mike Tannenbaum and Adam have done a very good job. And anytime you have success in the front office, you have to have a great marriage with your head coach. And Adam Gase obviously puts input with the front office, and obviously there's no egos there. Egos aren't clashing. There aren't differences of opinion. They understand that this is you have to have a good friendship and a good relationship as a front office and as a head coach, and they understand that if you want to win consistently. So they do a very good job of that. Obviously, Mike and Chris do whatever Adam Gase wants, and not to say like he bosses them around, but anything that he asks for, they will do for him. So they have a really good marriage up there. Let's see here. This next question comes from Brandon. He says, when Tony comes back, do you think our corners will be like Chris Harris and Talib? I don't know about. I mean, that's an all-time great tandem. I don't know if they'll be that, but they'll be pretty good. This question comes from T3MC. He says, do you think that the Denver and Patriot win was due to better coaching? No, I think it's due to the fact that we found a personnel grouping that really works. Like I said, the explosiveness of this offense was one of the bigger things that was missing from it. The 2016 Dolphins scored a lot of points off of big plays, like long touchdown plays. So that was completely gone in this offense. We didn't put a lot of methodical drives together in the 2016 season. We really scored from a ways out because we had a lot of playmakers on the football field at one time. So we were able to get that back these last few weeks, and that's really helped out the offense. So I think it's just personnel. Fly Solo 28 says, he says, poor Browns, are they ever going to win a game? It looks like the Tampa Bay game is going to hurt us. Still a great win, knocking Patriots out of first place. Absolutely. Anytime we beat the Patriots, especially in prime time, people are actually starting to give it. Like, if we beat the Patriots in prime time, we've won the last 4 games out of the last, or 4 of the last 5, or whatever it is the number is. But we beat the Patriots a lot at home in the Tannehill era a lot. And if any of those games were in prime time, I think they would have been talking about it even as much as they have been this week, especially since the game was late in the season. This question comes from Miles. He says, Skaggs, are these wins now going to affect us next season with salary and keeping players and releasing others? No, they shouldn't, because most of the players that are performing, Jordan Phillips, there's a lot of things that, it's a very tough decision the Dolphins are going to have to make, because there's a lot of players that are going to be free agents on the horizon, and obviously there's a lot of key players that are going to be free agents this offseason. So I don't think Yeah, I think Jarvis has definitely proved his worth this season. Especially since the circumstances of his success haven't been like, oh, everything has to be perfect for Jarvis to have success. He's been doing it with lackluster play at the quarterback position and a revolving door at the offensive line and at the quarterback position. So I think Jarvis is definitely his worth has definitely went through the roof. So I think that probably has affected it a little bit. This question comes from Trey. He says, do you think the Dolphins can make the playoffs? Also, love the channel. Well, thank you. Yeah, we can, but it's going to take a lot of help. Like I said before, I really don't even care if we make the playoffs. I think if we going 9-7 and having back-to-back winning seasons, and especially having a winning season this season with a lot of our players that were such key contributors to the 2016 season, for Adam Gase to do that for his first 2 years in Miami, I think means a lot to the fan. It means a lot to me, I know, and I think it means a lot to the fans because that shows you that he has brought a level of success and consistency to this franchise that we haven't seen in a very long time. And since Jimmy Johnson or Don Shula, if you think about it, I'm skipping on his name. In the early 2000s, we had a lot of success due to the fact that we inherited a lot of Jimmy Johnson's team and stuff of that nature, but we really haven't had a culture and a foundation like this, and I think that proves its worth. That Adam Gase is doing something right if he accomplishes that. So I think it's a big deal if we have our second consecutive winning season. And that's big for people. That's big for free agents as well. That people when they look at the Dolphins now, they think, okay, Adam Gase is legit. 2 seasons in a row. It wasn't a one-hit wonder. 2 winning seasons in a row. I think it means a lot. The Gamer 12345 says, if we drafted that defensive end Chubb, could we play him an outside linebacker? Yeah, he's a pretty versatile guy. Gamer 12345 says, what does Pittsburgh have to do to beat the Patriots? Also, would you do a preview of that game because it will determine the AFC? No, I don't think I'll do a preview to that game. We might talk about it afterwards, or I don't know, but that game, that does determine the AFC and who gets the number 1 seed and who has to go to whose stadium throughout the playoffs. It's big implications. What does Pittsburgh have to do to beat them? They have to win. They have to be a better defensive team than New England. They have to figure out a way to neutralize Brady as best they can. They cannot, they've been a zone blitz team for like 20, 30 years at this point, since, obviously Bill Cowher was there. Mike Tomlin, they didn't change their defensive philosophy one bit. They were still that same zone blitz scheme. So that's something you can't do against Brady because he is so smart and so intelligent. You have to beat him man-to-man. You're not going to outsmart him. You're not going to confuse him. He's going to find the opening holes in zones, and he's going to slice you up. So you have to beat him man-to-man. You have to beat him man-to-man. Sometimes, you can't outsmart the man, so you just have to beat him straight up. You just can't. He's just too smart. That's how it has to be. So they have to play man-to-man coverage, which they can't because, Artie Burns, Sean Day, their secondary, they're getting Joe Hayden. I don't know if they're getting Joe Hayden back this week, but if they do, that's a huge upgrade for them, and that allows them to do that. I think this defense is better than it was last season. They have better pass rushers on it. Like Bud Dupree, he's been very inconsistent throughout his career, but TJ Watt is a legitimate number 1 pass rusher in the NFL. So they've gotten a lot better on the edge, and when you talk about getting pressure on the quarterback. But they're going to have to play tight coverage and get pressure on Brady. People have been saying that, they don't have a Sue, so that allows Brady to step up into the pocket. And my response to that is they don't have a Sue, but they have a Cameron Hayward. They have a Hardgrave. Stephon Tuitt. They have played people that they can move inside. Obviously, they run a 3-4 system. I don't think that's going to be an issue for them. I think they can prevent Brady on a consistent basis from stepping up into side. They have good players in the middle. It's not like they don't. It's just I think something that they were lacking was a consistent outside rushing presence last season that they really haven't had in a very long time since like the Joey Porter days and stuff of that nature. TJ Watt is a legit beast. Like this man, he's one of my, other than Marshawn Lattimore, probably his defensive rookie of the year. So they've done a good job of adding somebody like that who fits their scheme to a T. But I think they're just not a good matchup with them on defense. I mean, I don't think their corners can go man-to-man with them. Gronk is an issue. Who are they going to? But Sean Davis has had a great year. But, the thing about teams that have had success with them against the pass, very similar to what we did, something that, obviously the team that Brady has struggled in the playoffs with for the last few years is Denver. And that Denver has a great front seven. They have a great edge rusher in Von Miller. They have great man-to-man corners on the outside. They have great coverage safeties when they had T.J. Ward and Darian Stewart at the height of their powers. So that's how they were able to do it. They just straight up beat them. Like, come at us. You're going to beat us one-on-one, you're going to beat us one-on-one. But they couldn't because that defense was really, really good. Can the Steelers do that? I don't know if they have the personnel to do that in the secondary. But they can definitely, their front seven is better. But their offense can definitely score a lot of points. Like, I think it's going to be a track meet. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, but I think it's going to come down to whose defense is better. And hopefully the Steelers prevails. But I don't know if the New England... I don't think they can do it. Depending, again, who knows? Maybe maybe Mike is, he saw this coming down the road. Maybe he understood that, yeah, we are the second best team in the AFC, but we have to obviously beat the champs. So maybe he has a game plan. Maybe he has a package that helps them against New England. But losing Shazier is a huge hit as well. So we'll see how it goes. But I definitely think it's going to be a high-scoring game. But I think it's going to come down, can the Steelers beat them straight up? And we'll see. The Gamer 1245 says, I heard people making excuses saying we only won because of Gronk was suspended. Would Gronk have made that much of a difference? He might have converted a couple third downs, but they didn't get in the red zone a lot. Unless Gronk, I mean, we beat the cheeks off of them with Gronk multiple times in Miami. So no, I don't think it has anything to do with Gronk at all. The Gamer 1245 says, what do you think of Xavier Howard this week? Amazing. And like I said, I just want to see him be consistent. That he was everything that I thought he, that's consistency right there. Back-to-back weeks of 2 picks. I mean, that's more than consistent. That's just dominant. This question comes from Magnus. He says, do you think it's time to let go of the terrible 2013 logo and moderate uniform for this classic one, keeping the 90s midnight blue instead of the black gloves, sleeves, and accessories? Dude, I love those jerseys, and I've said this who doesn't love those jerseys? Who doesn't love that logo? I think why people, not only do they look amazing, but it brings back, that's classic Dolphins right there. And, good on Adam Gase for, keeping that kind of tradition alive from last 3 years, really, we've done it. But, yeah, I wish we could wear those all the time. But I think the licensing deal has something to do with that, all that other craziness. Miami Dolphins fans. This question comes from Miami Dolphins fan. He says, how did we win? Listen, the one thing that we have done, and Chris Greer has said it multiple times, Matt Tannenbaum knows firsthand how to build a team to beat the Patriots because he did it in the playoffs with the Jets. We've added players that are very similar to what the Denver defense did. We have really good edge rusher. We don't run the same, scheme. We're 4-3, they're 3-4, but we added physical man cover corners. We have a slot corner that is a dominant man-to-man cover guy. We have an outside corner that is playing at a Darrelle Revis level these last 2 weeks. So those are the things we can do. We can match up with them one-on-one and have success. Not many teams can do that in the league because of either the scheme they run or the personnel that they have. But we have a great front seven. Our secondary played lights out, and they, at times they have all year. But we have a lot of playmakers with our safeties. Not many teams have that safety duo either. So it's just matchups. It's just matchups. We match up really well with them. This question comes from D'Anthony. He says, if we beat the Bills back-to-back, will we have a shot? Of course. If we sweep them, yes. And that's the hardest thing. That's going to be the hardest thing to do is, Bill Belichick said it the best. He's like, it's hard to play a team 2 weeks in a row, basically. Obviously 3 weeks, and in the span of 3 weeks. But it's hard to do that because you know each other so well. You know what you want to do in key situations. You know if you guys, what kind of plays you like to run if you get in a rut and stuff of that kind of nature. Division, no matter if you're a way better team or not, division games are always the hardest because each team prepares and builds their team to beat you. So it's always hard. And, you game plan for these games before the season even starts because you know that you're going to play that particular team for sure. And if coaches and players, some coaches and players knew that teams that they were going to play before the year started, they game plan for them a year ahead as well. But you just don't, and it's very hard to play within the division and win all your division games. It's very difficult. So we're going to have to do it if we want to get into the playoffs, but I think we're capable of it for sure. And I think this team's on a roll. I mean, that win right there, man. They're on a roll now. Trust me. That they really truly believe that they can go 9-7 and get in. And to have that belief, and they'll follow Adam Gase through a brick wall right now, especially after that victory. So I am Skyx83, and I will see you guys.